And we are back again with another tutorial on Rust here on my channel. Now, the last tutorial we focused on the conditionals, very important part of any programming language, and we experienced that it was kind of the same kind of syntax as in Python for some parts, and the actual separation of scope of delimiters were using syntax shared in other languages like JavaScript and Java and so on. We also looked at different kind of operators and so on, and experienced that it kind of had the same, way it would work compared to other languages. Now, in this video today, we're going to jump one step ahead and go to the one called loops. So, in Rust, we're going to take a look at loops. It contains three different kind of loops. In this particular case here, it's called while, it's a loop, and for loop. And let's just go ahead and check out what all this is all about. So it does seem like a similar syntax description as we see in Python. And this is a general 1 to 10 output where it starts from 1 and goes up to the number not defined, but the one just before that. And it's a little language dependent on how it handles these 1 to something in a loop. So just in order to get familiar with this, we're going to go ahead and go back here. And we're going to create a for loop and say for x in 1 to 11. And the syntax was the same. I'll say print line x. Was that the syntax? And then we definitely need the format one more time. Add it. Running it again. And we'll see the numbers printed to the screen. That's pretty standard. We also got, ourselves a variable. Let name equal to. Put in my name, for example. And in Python, it would, basically seem, if it did something like this, it would print out something. And it didn't really do that. So what I can do instead, say .chars, for example. And this is also what it suggests here down below. So what I'm thinking, it would then print my name in letters. So it would need to have a way to be generated. Already now we might think, what about this object? We could have string as objects, and we'll then print many different combinations of ways we can combine our strings in a programming language in Rust to get different kind of results. What usually matters for me when I learn a new language is not so much the things that I look through right now, because it's kind of the basics. It's more like the semantics and all the special things, that the nitty-gritty things that keep things together. In other words, and I'm gonna excuse me for my language here, whatever make that shit run, right? So we basically have to, pay attention to the small things that differs. Also, the use of the continue word is being introduced right here. So it basically is a way for it to ignore. If we're hitting number 5, it is not printed out, as you can see right here. It jumps from 4 to 6. We will then ignore the loop and go back instead of printing it out. If, of course, this is a matter of structure of the code. So if the print statement was before the if loop, it would definitely print out x is 5. Anyways, we're going to continue with the indefinite loop. Why? Indefinite loop is used when a number of iterations of loops is indeterminate or unknown. And we do that by using the while or the loop. And in this case here, we are creating a function we're saying create a variable, set it to 0. It is set to mutable. We're going to pay attention to this now. We have the while loop saying as long as x is lower than 10, print it out, and that's really it. So this will run, well, we were promised infinite loops. So going back just a bit, when you use the for loop in this particular case, what they probably mean is that you give it some sort of case to work on. For example, you say like for something, and that would just be a carrier variable. Don't think too much about this, but this is created on compile time. And while this is actually running, it's going to be populated with whatever next iteration there is inside of this variable name. Now, variables is a collection of, addresses containing a value. And that address will be stepped upon and continued on to the next one. So it's some sort of pointer inside the value, or well, it's just in most occasions not really a pointer. It's just the next value until a 0-byte termination is met, and then it's gonna end the loop that runs through it. So when we introduce to this indefinite loop, that basically means that we could say while true, for example, and it will run forever. And we can, of course, code, but something like this would run forever and would be pretty bad in most occasions. It would kind of need some sort of, termination sequence inside of it, some sort of line of code that would terminate this loop. And I could go all philosophical about, having loops that would not end, and that would be pretty bad if it didn't end. So let's just continue not to talk about it anymore. Let's see. And now we have the loop, and this is a special thing. The while loop executes instructions each times, and the loop is a while true loop. So if I go in here and write loop, and then I create a variable called let mod x equals to 0, then I say x equal to x plus 1, I'm going to increment the x variable and say if x equal to 10, break this loop. Now I assume the break keyword applies here, and we could definitely just go ahead and do a print line here, and we're going to remember the format that and say x loop was terminated on step. I'm going to run this code. It should definitely say something. So it's forgot the semicolon. Let's do that. And now it says loop was terminated on step 10, which is true. Because whenever x is reaching 10, we'll break the loop, and that's really it. So this is just a way for us in Rust to say we don't really want to, write while true. This could easily just be while true, just like that. I'm pretty sure would be completely the same. Yes. And we also got a warning here, and it kind of wants us to use the loop. And we're getting a little philosophical about this, because we are thinking about why does it say to us that we should probably use the loop instead. Now, why would it be a thing? Well, basically, this is a language, and the ones created it might say like this is more efficient. So this is why we should use the loop function. That is definitely what we should think about. And they also talk about the continue statement. I'm not really gonna talk about it. It's the same thing every time. And basically it is just, you know, skipping a step. That's really it, right? It could be for a number of reasons. Sometimes when you're creating an algorithm with some sort of loop going on, and sometimes you meet a certain result, you kind of just need to ignore it, for example. Or maybe you need to apply code to it another stage, but for now you ignore it because it's a part of the algorithm or how far you've gotten writing it or testing it, or, whatever really. You could do it. Even though that, when writing code, I would definitely be in a more philosophical end of the keyboard these days. In the old days, I would definitely go ahead and just chunk that, write that code out and be all let's just code it and write all the letters. But when you've been writing code for a long time, it just at some point when you take a break, and I have, you just feel different about it, and you feel that what's the rush, right? Really, and this is what I feel these days is I don't really see any need to rush into things. I know small businesses are rushing things, and they want the young developers that can just go in and do a whole lot of CRUD operations, back and forth data, creating customers, giving you something to look at online. And that's great. But that is kind of the way of talking about, first entry level jobs where you just throw data around for different kind of use into a model and then back to database and so on. And I'm not really going to comment on that, but I definitely think that these days a philosophical approach to programming is probably something that I would think more about. I also want to highlight a comment that I got on my Rust tutorials from a viewer, and I want to say thank you for commenting. And you did tell me to go through ownership and borrowing before I were going to create my own stuff. So I think since they're already down here and really close, there's a great chance that we're gonna go through a lot more before I will do anything myself. I would really like to get to the input part because creating input, I was always fascinated with input, and basically I I just want to yeah, I just want to make sure that we do it the right tempo, the right step before we create an application. All right, a bit of talking at the end here today. So I would just like to ask if you're not already subscribed, please go ahead and think about pressing the button, because it is free to subscribe to my channel. And if you do so, gonna help the channel grow. I will be more than happy for just you being a subscriber. It will also help me to earn a little bit more money. It's a little bit, maybe a 0.1 cent per view if I'm lucky. And it will, at the end of the day, at the end of the month, mean a lot to me to see my subscriber count grow so we can develop this channel to be even more. So for now, just want to say thank you for watching. I'm going to see you again online, and have a really nice day.